Hello and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. This podcast is brought to you by FinPro Search Partners, the executive search firm for the insurtech industry on an international basis. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to hear a bit more about our recruitment services, please visit www.wearefinpro.com. I hope you enjoy the episode. So we're starting 2023 with a really exciting one for the Leadership in Insurance podcast. This is a recording with MD of Insurance for Google, Nigel Walsh. Nigel's a fantastic guy. We've been lucky enough to be on a podcast with him for 11FS. He's on various podcasts all the time. He's got great kind of just overview of what's happening in insurtech, and he's always a sort of brilliant speaker and thought leader in the world of insurance and insurtech and insurance innovation. So we get to chop it up here, and it was fantastic having him on. Like I say, it's something that we've really tried to make happen for a while, and Nigel was very kind to give us some time to record this. So first episode of the year, Nigel Walsh, MD of Insurance for Google, on the Leadership in Insurance podcast. Good morning and welcome to the Leadership Insurance podcast. That's a good G-up from our friend Nigel Walsh there, who's MD of Insurance at Google. We needed that because it's been a bit of a technological nightmare, but it wouldn't be podcasting if it wasn't. Nigel, you're probably very well known to most of our audience, but just before we dive in, it'd be lovely if you could introduce yourself and obviously the role that you play at Google.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm pleased I'm here to help the technology. I feel that when you work for a technology company, you become the instant technology support person for whatever issue might be out there. So I'm delighted to help, right? So as you say, yeah, Nigel Walsh, I'm the managing director for insurance at Google Cloud, based out in New York, having an absolute blast with what we're up to right now and some of the things that we can help insurers enable, which we'll get into later on. Been with Google about 18 months. And prior to that, most people will know me from my roles at Deloitte leading insurtech and digital insurance, and prior to that, Capgemini.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, thank you very much for coming on board. We've flown the Nigel Walsh flag here quite a lot, mainly because we shared the same mission to make people fall in love with insurance. Yes. And we're doing our bit there. We're doing our bit, and of course we've podcasted before on 11FS, so that was a lot of fun as well. So, yeah, well, I mean, I want to start with a sort of big, very open question. We talk about innovation a lot on the podcast as kind of the core of what we're talking about. I always like to start with what does that mean to you when you hear that word innovation?
This is like the gazillion-dollar question, isn't it? And for me, innovation at the highest level feels like doing something new and different to what we've always done. But as soon as you break into it, I often try and get into are we innovating for an evolution, or are we innovating for a revolution? So I often think about, or if I put it into maybe more insurance-y words, the digitization of processes or the digitalization. And let me give you a great example of that in actual play. So digitization for me feels like where much of the community has spent energy, effort, time in terms of taking existing processes that for time immemorial we've always done, to be fair, and digitizing them. Have we got new ways of doing things that are quicker, smarter, more accurate, more efficient, and ultimately a lower cost to what we used to do? And you see that walking around London with slips and whatever else that are still taking place. You see that. I was on a website yesterday looking at claims forms online, and it was actually a PDF that you'd fill in and then submit. Well, the digitization or innovation there would be updating that and make it a little bit better. So you take out steps in the process, or you make them digital. So that's innovation. That's innovation that constantly evolves to make what we've always done slightly better. The revolution piece for me, though, almost goes back to the mantra of when insurtech was born, 5, 6, 8 years ago, that it was here to disrupt the insurers from the outset and almost rethinks what we've always done and challenges status quo. So a great example of that would be the big trend for algo trading or algorithmic trading in the UK market right now. So what the folks, James and Matthew and the team at Brit and Key are up to, where they're using algorithms to do things that we would have done independently before. So this for me is actually rethinking from the outside in what's actually possible and going for a revolutionary approach rather than an evolutionary approach. And I guess I can sum it all up by saying one of my favorite quotes I kind of go back to time and time again is, never before have we moved this fast, but never again will we move this slow. And I always have that in the back of my mind, because it's a really nice way of going, all right, we're going to change this for tomorrow, but even tomorrow is going to be out of date in a few years' time, or a year's time, or a day's time.
That was very succinctly put. And it's funny, actually, I was having this thought walking back today from a meeting I was at, and I was thinking about evolution versus revolution. I was actually having that challenge in my mind, because we quite often, we're very guilty in insurance, I think, of just looking at other industries and assuming they've done it better than us. And I think we can acknowledge that largely a lot of them maybe have moved quicker. And I was thinking about the role that regulation plays in innovation, because like, how quickly or how much can you evolve can you have a revolution in a market such as ours that's regulated? There is restriction there. So some of that kind of is naivety with people diving in. But I was just having this I was actually dealing with my bank, and I was going, how much of this is revolutionary? I've got a Starling bank. I love all the app. I love the way it works. Is this evolutionary or revolutionary? And I have that debate in my mind. And I was like, well, elements of it are just digitizing. But I think I'm always kind of really cautious that we just digitize processes and we don't question what's gone before. And I suppose that's the kind of balancing act, isn't it? It's kind of keeping what is sacred and needs to be there from a regulatory standpoint, and then kind of pushing the thought processes on what can be changed to genuinely kind of be revolutionary.
We need to hire more. Yeah, we should hire more curious children, and I mean that in the nicest way. I've got a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they're forever asking the question why. And I think we should have more people go, why are we doing this? Why do we need this? Why do we have to do this? Regulation for me is actually a core source of innovation, because it drives certain behaviors that we have to do. So I see regulation as an opportunity to innovate and think differently about how we've always done things. So that should create opportunity, not a barrier for things that we can or can't do. Like you, I'm a huge fan of what Anne Bowden and the team are doing at Starling. But the difference between insurance, and we're jumping straight to personalized, the difference between personalized insurance and personal lines banking is that insurance is typically fire and forget. You'll go onto a comparison website in the UK. In the US, you go to your agent or your broker. You'll get your insurance. You will not normally interact unless you've got a midterm adjustment, a service issue, like a change of address or whatever else it might be, or a claim. Whereas a bank account, you'll get to every day, once a week, whatever it might be, just to see your balance, make sure your direct debits are working or whatever it might be, or make a payment to someone. So it's transactional versus interactional. So I think the two are very, very different. And we go back to the user's needs, and this whole trend right now for embedded insurance. Well, actually, embedded insurance is part of the trend. The actual trend will be, what are the things that I want my insurer to help me out with? If it's health insurance, it might be, hey, Alex, you need to work out more or work out less and have more sleep. If it's auto, it might be, you're driving too quickly or you're driving too slowly, or you need to do X, Y, and Z, gamify the experience around UBI and stuff. If it's home, it might be around escape of water. So for me, the shift that we're going to make is into these services that people actually foresee and engage, better benefit from, and will use more often, as opposed to the traditional, I've bought a policy, I'll renew it in a year's time.
Yeah. I was just renewing my home insurance policy, and this made me sad, actually, Nigel. I went to do it, and then I was using a super slick new InsurTech. Obviously, it's kind of, I've got to test these things out. That's what we got to do. And then of course. And then I was asked when my house had been built, and I was like, I don't know. Why are you asking me?
It's my favorite question, not necessarily the built one, but what types of lock do you have? And no one absolutely knows. And actually, I think Aviva about 5 or 6 years ago did a fantastic ad that's on YouTube now. You can go look at it for get a quote, not a quiz. And it's a really good thing where they sit this person down in a mock-up interview going, what type of locks do you have? When was your house built? Is it got a flat roof, or what percentage is this? And for the most part, none of us actually know, because we weren't around when it was built, and that sort of stuff doesn't necessarily come across. Maybe the innovation, Alex, you're talking about is a fact sheet or a passport for your property that has all these questions that address that you can give in, and you can use as a QR code to go and get a quote for everything else, and it pre-answers all those questions for you.
I mean, that sort of begs the question, is that insurance is one part of the value chain of someone's life. Like my life is all these elements that I need to, but going through the process of buying a house up until recently, it doesn't matter how many times you've done it before, you're still staggered by how antiquated it was, to the point where I had to deliver wet signature documents. And you think, why is that even a thing? I mean, what's, that's, yeah, it's madness, to the point where my vendor actually had to drive from Plymouth to London in a day to get the transaction done, which blows you away. So yeah.
But if you think about it, how did those transactions happen during COVID? Because one of the things I talked about a while back was digital indigestion. So during COVID, almost everything managed to operate normally, and we found ways to get these things done. Has that industry jumped backwards to the way it's always done, or use COVID as a way to look forward and go, hey, during COVID, we didn't need wet signatures. Can't we just keep that going forward?
That's a really important point, because I think definitely I've seen a bit of that kind of recession to things that we've done before, rather than kind of going full steam ahead and embracing it. I mean, I saw that just in my industry, the amount of times I've been asked physically go to meetings face to face, which I'm more than happy to do, but if and when it's convenient, and if and when it's required. And sometimes some of the searches that we do are quite discreet, and we have to be very careful, and it's better to do those face to face. Most of the time, it's nicer to do it face to face, but the reality is, if I need to spend 45 minutes traveling to your office to have a half an hour meeting, that's not efficient for anybody. And I'm quite comfortable doing this stuff online. So I think just some of its behaviors, but when you look at things like that are kind of fundamental parts of the process, wet signatures, like you say, passport, using blockchain technology to kind of have a kind of house's fingerprint on there, and then moving it forward as a digital contract. I mean, that sort of stuff just makes perfect sense to me. That means we're not all getting our surveys as well. If we keep buying houses, that survey's kind of stuck on the ledger, as it were. So there's so much to do that.
The other way to think about it, though, of course, is if you are going to do a search where you've met those people before, you have a established trust. So therefore, you have to, it's always contextual, right? I'm with you. I much prefer meeting people in person, but it's almost the right balance for the right things at the right time. So if you can be more efficient and and have that relationship, that's great. But if you're trying to establish that relationship, you'd probably make that extra 45-minute journey to go and meet that person or individuals to go and establish that rapport first and foremost.
Of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's where I've kind of pushed my behaviors now, that when it's about relationships driven, I've just said that on my meetings now, I prefer to be tools down, and we are just getting to know each other and building trust, because a lot of the kind of fundamentals of what most people do can be done like this or any other method. Talking more specifically about Google, and Google Cloud, and I think there's still probably a lack of awareness about what part Google has to play in the insurance ecosystem, certainly from many practitioners. So what role does Google Cloud play within innovation in insurance?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been trying to address this with many of the team and our clients for the last 18 months that I've been here now. And it really is to share how organizations can benefit from the scale, capability, insights that an organization like Google Cloud has to help insurers do, to our very first question, innovate quicker, faster, smarter, better. So to put it into context, I'm often asked what makes us unique, and I will always start with data and AI and security. And I think if I start there, I can either work up into dedicated solutions that are packaged together around some of our core capabilities to solve banking or financial services or retail or other issues, and then all the way down to the core infrastructure that I think would be, I'm always going to call it generation one cloud providers. And of course, there are many other cloud providers out there. What differentiates us, if I get into that middle piece around data and AI, is everything we do in our consumer business is underpinned by data and AI, and leveraging that know-how, skill set, scale, capability, and applying that to products for the enterprise is just fantastic. So I can either start on the edge, and the edge cases might be, we've got capabilities like document AI, visual AI, voice AI. So the theme there is they've all got artificial intelligence built in from the outset. And one might be dealing with documents, whether it's a claims form or a submission form coming in, extracting all that and then slamming it against the system of record or policy admin or claim system. Visual AI is exactly as it sounds, using images or video and taking the data out of those to then put back into the process. Again, all things that are typically done in manual or very manual ways today. And then voice AI is exactly the same. We did a press release with TIAA in the States recently, where we're talking about how our voice AI solution is being leveraged on top of their contact center to do deflection, insight, service. We've got capabilities there like speech to text, text to speech, and so much more. So there's some really good examples out there, both from other industries, from Google as an organization, that we can apply back to insurers really, really quickly. So for me, number one, start with the capabilities around AI that you can wrap around the edges. And then, of course, as you dig into the detail, you've got to store that data somewhere. So if I look at things like Analytics Hub, Enterprise Knowledge Graph, Entity Resolution, our ability to display and give insights, all that sort of stuff, there's a huge capability for understanding what we've got. I mean, I've never seen an insurer say to me, we haven't got enough data. What they struggle, I think, a lot of the times with is insights. So we're able to help process those way faster and way more efficiently to get the things that you want going forward. So for me, they're the two or three key things I'd start out with by saying, here's how Google Cloud helps insurers drive benefit inside their organization.
Is that sometimes some of the challenge for businesses trying to engage? And there's plenty of smart people on both sides of this fence, but particularly on the insurer side as well. When you've got such a suite of services, knowing the best way to engage as a sort of starting point, is that sometimes the challenge because it's sort of so broad and widely defined? I mean, you obviously did a neat job there, but I think sometimes it's a case of, people looking for much simpler solutions, but you're almost offering them a suite of kind of opportunities of solutions, and then it's about the creativity between the Google team and them to kind of come up with the kind of best use cases.
I think it's two things. Are you buying a capability, or are you looking at establishing a partnership? And partnerships for me are much more than hey, we need to go fix X. It's more of a, how can we work together to accelerate our business to meet our combined OKRs or objectives? And that might be, we're looking to take cost out because our combined ratio has gone through the roof and we need to try and take cost out in different ways. We want to make the claims process more effective and more efficient for brokers, agents, consumers. We want to make the ingestion and submission process smarter. So it's actually about finding each one of those things and working out how we're being measured. Are we being measured on satisfaction, cost, efficiency, whatever it might be, and then working out, is it a point solution or is it a partnership? And I think having those conversations at the outset makes life much richer for all parties involved, and then allows us to go, well, actually, look, here's the capabilities that we have at the core, and they solve these issues, whether you're personal, commercial, health, or elsewhere. But we've got the ability to go up into industry domain solutions or down into core infrastructure. And I think we're seeing more and more clients now get into the world of, multiple partnerships or multi-cloud or hybrid cloud environments where they're doing a bit of both. And I think Europe has been leading the way in this, to be fair, where you're not putting everything into one place. And again, as an insurance organization, you want to make sure your operational resilience is in place as well.
I'm interested to know in your time there, so 18 months or so into your Google career, what are the sort of challenges facing insurers that, I suppose, theme-wise, has that evolved and changed? And are there sort of distinct themes? You sort of almost see these waves of interest in particular things, of specific challenges that Google would be able to help them with on the technology front?
Yeah, I don't want to make this a technology sales pitch in any way, shape, or form. I don't think the challenges have changed dramatically. I think there's a couple of highlights I'd call out. One is the sheer vast volume and scale and availability of data that's out there. So we've not been very good at organizing, collecting, and driving insights as an industry. I think that's something that Google brings to bear extremely well, given our background. Number one. Number two, I guess the rise of the insurtechs or fintechs, to your point on Starling, most of the traditional carriers and brokers and elsewhere will be anything from 50 to 300 years old. And if you're a 150-year-old carrier, you come with a level of technical debt that requires managing, running, and whatever else.
Obviously, talent is my selfish thing that I like to talk about, Nigel. And I wanted to kind of understand what I've seen as a bit of an evolution with the particularly big insurers, more traditional insurance players, is what the talent setup looks like. And what I mean by that, different types of teams that are engaging with innovation, and kind of any sort of thoughts on how that tends to work well, because I think we're past I think innovation teams have a huge important part to play in insurance. I think they're useful for driving that. But then if it's isolated there, it's problematic. And I just wondered, when you talk about partnership, I thought about these types of partnerships roles that we keep sort of seeing, those types of, where does it tend to work well when you're trying to engage on these partnerships? And, is it important the sort of level you go in? Do you go in with different parts of the business? And I suppose where it kind of roughly falls down from both a kind of talent setup perspective and probably reach and where you're engaging with that business.
Yeah, that's a broad question. Talent, let me speak on talent for a second, in that
Sure.
talent, generally, we've heard that talent skills and talent gaps have been prevalent for a very long time. And specifically when it comes to cloud, we've also heard that cloud skills or data and AI or data science skills are lacking across the board, never mind insurance. So the search for talent is actually quite a difficult thing, to the extent back in 2021, we announced we were going to train 40 million people globally using Google Cloud Skills to make sure there was access to capability of folks that can use, understand, and build experience in Google Cloud. When it comes to insurance, I found over the last few years, we went through the whole phases of innovation labs and innovation teams and whatever else. I think what's changed now is those innovation teams have gone from centralized innovation teams to more localized to the business problem they're going to solve. I.e., there's a claims innovation team, an underwriting innovation team, a data innovation team, and they all come up together in a much different way than what that was done before. And I think that works really, really well. For me, it's not always about the talent, but actually about the organizational setup. Have these folks been given the budget, first and foremost? Secondly, the authority, and finally, the responsibility to do stuff. What we've seen for a long time, at least over my last couple of roles, has been they've been given the remit but no authority. So you can't win in that sort of scenario. You've got to be able to go, hey, I want to go be able to disrupt, whether it's evolutionary or revolutionary, but are you giving me permission, power, authority, and money to make it happen, or is it just a nice thing to go do?
Yeah, it's something we've seen as well, is the communication of those teams as well. I mean, like I've told this anecdotally a couple of times, was we built an algo team for a traditional carrier, or we built a team that was going to run that project and say, is it possible? Should we get it off the shelf? Should we get in some expertise? Should we build it in-house? And ask those kind of those right questions. And they started on this project, and then they found out along the way that different parts of the organization were already working on sort of tools that would add to this solution, whether it be ingesting emails and be able to kind of get out broker demands and various things. And so the communication setup of these kind of localized innovation hubs was a challenge for this particular business. And I wouldn't imagine they're alone, because I think communicating between those seems to be the biggest challenge for us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's starting to solve its way through, because we've gone through all the hype of experimentation and POCs and whatever else, but we've got to tie it back to how each of the business areas are measured. I think we've had most success where a business owner is in partnership with a technology execution capability, and side by side we get it done, not one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we've noticed InsurTech has been useful in driving is a much more healthy sort of conversation. When I have conversations now with quote unquote incumbent insurers or traditional insurance carriers, There's much more awareness or interest in it, and therefore just challenging. There's an environment of challenge in the status quo, which has become more normalised. And that doesn't mean that we're in this kind of like, I don't know, utopia of innovation and change, but it does mean that there's a kind of open dialogue and conversation about it, which I think is healthy. Does that resonate with you? Do you think the sort of the resistance has broken slightly, and now we're having much more sensible conversations about innovation?
I think the resistance broke a long time ago. I think people were very open to engaging in insurtechs, but I think at first we tried too many. Now we need to work out which ones we're after. Back to my point about innovation being pushed to the extremities of where the problems actually exist. So rather than having one team do everything, you've now got a team in claims working with insurtechs that have capabilities in claims, but the communication is still vital, because if we're doing ingestion and analysis in claims, the same capabilities are used in underwriting or pricing.
Yeah, no, I would say the same, but I think the PR is still sort of fairly and maybe they're sitting in London slightly. Some of the businesses, the resistance to change. I don't think the resistance to change is there. I mean, one thing that we've talked about internally is that you sort of like when you come with solutions, and we were talking about core systems providers recently in at FinPro. It's a sort of exciting conversation we have on a Friday. And we were talking about these core systems providers, and one of the kind of tracks of PR had been that, all these people don't know it's broken. And I was like, the first person that knows whether the technology stack is good or bad is probably the CTO of an incumbent carrier. Whether they've got the capability to sort of swallow that whole and make that change wholesale, we know they can't because of the regulatory concerns, but also just piecemeal budget, authority, all of these things that we're just discussing, but it's tackling more discrete solutions that are complementary, I think, is the theme of work we're seeing.
I've always said lots of these are and solutions as opposed to or solutions. So often you put a traditional policy administration or core admin system with one of the insurtechs, because you don't always need to be able to launch a new product every hour. I mean, in fact, you don't need to launch a new product every hour. It might be every 3 months or every 6 weeks. And your traditional legacy platform might not be able to do that. But maybe if you added a bolt-on capability from one of the many insurtechs out there that do this, you could have best of both worlds and work out how you do product speed to market, the agility that you want, the agility to go test it in the market. And if it doesn't work, you shut it down. And so we've tried it. It didn't work, but you haven't spent a year trying to launch it. You spent 6 weeks or 12 weeks trying to do that.
Talking about that sort of speed of change, do you think insurers are guilty of being reactive to the innovations that happen in the market? I think we both know that probably isn't the case, but is it still more reactionary versus proactive, or?
That's a really good question. I think to some extent we are. I guess the question probably is, are we one step ahead, 5 steps ahead, or 100 steps ahead?
Yeah.
There's probably no point being 100 steps ahead because we've missed the customer demand, or we're not meeting them with what they need to be today. I'm not sure being 1 step ahead is good enough, but we have to be 5, 10, 15, 20 steps ahead, or at least have a path how we're going to continuously innovate. So reactionary, probably to some extent on the back foot of what our digital experience is in every other industry. But if someone said to you, what's the future of insurance look like? Or how will my 13-year-old son buy and engage in insurance? We should have a view of what that might look like now. Because if it's the same way as we do it today and our parents did before us, I think we failed. I've said that before.
So go on then. That's what should that look like? What do you think? I mean, 20 years down the line, I've just done my house insurance, the personal. I'll take the personal lines experience. Is it in those embedded customer centric? Is it the experience is different, or is there more kind of distinct change that we'll see in those insurance solutions, do you think?
I think we've got to get back to what customers need or want or provide value, and insurance claims will probably be the last resort. It'll be the byproduct of everything else, getting to a situation where we need to make the claim for the home, whatever it might be. But I think to see the future today, in fact, if I step back 5 years or 3 years, and you look at the World Economic Forum's annual global risks report, on there were things like cyber attack, global pandemic, loss of clean water, lots of increase in natural catastrophes. Any of these sound familiar? We know a reasonably good view of what the future holds out already from the research and insights that we've got, whether it's wildfire, whether it's flood, whether it's whatever it may be. What we have to try and do is stop playing catch up and working out how we can take a jump forward to start getting ready for these things in different ways. So I think embedded is a massive part of all of these things, but embedded is one answer on the acquisition of insurance. We're then going to work out if you've got 17 individual covers from 15 different providers that look after your home and the services that go around it that you really want, security, insights, whatever it might be. How does a claim experience work? How does a service experiences work? And how do we monetize all those together going forward? That equally fall within the right regulation. So I think it is going to change. I don't think doing nothing is an option. I never have done.
That's yeah. I mean, I think the sort of integration of your life, your digital life, your digital sounds backward just to say. You know, we were talking about styling. We were talking about kind of your retail buying experiences. You know, I've talked many times on here going, if I can't get something delivered in 24 hours, I probably won't order it, which is a terrible way to be, but it's just now what I accept to be the norm.
It's the same as me with things like Apple Pay or Google Pay, or whatever it may be. If I can't pay with a tap, I often just don't buy it in the first place and go somewhere that does accept it. I remember being in the middle of a national park in the US, and I walked into a store that wouldn't accept Apple Pay. I walked to a farmer's market outside in the middle of nowhere who had a cell phone and a square terminal and managed to take my payment. So I think it's there. It's back to this technical debt and legacy that we have. We need to go solve. The other thing is the relevance. So if I said to you, Alex, if you're driving back to your example, from London to Plymouth with carrier A, and it auto switched you to carrier B based on your risk profile and you're driving on the way back, would you care?
Yeah. I've asked her. No, I wouldn't. But we've had this conversation a few times lately. We care about insurance and we're talking about it, and you're on your mission to make everyone fall in love with it. But the reality is, most people don't care. You know, they want it. They want that security. They want to know it exists, but they don't really want any interaction with it. So, which is why I'm always pulled in two directions between, if I had more interaction with my insurer, would I value that service more? You know, there's more touch points, more chance for them to wow me as a customer. There's an argument to that. But there's another side of it going, as long as they offer me this, they give me the right cover, the appropriate cover. So if anything bad happens, I'm covered. Do I want that in a kind of seamless behind the scenes version? And I can't quite decide which one I pull in direction of, because I want to be wowed by every customer experience, but I also have things like, I talked about a really funny customer. I had to order a blood test online. It came to me for medical screening. I sent them in, and then it was following with this sort of traditional customer service thing now of texting me going, "How was your experience?" And I was thinking, that's not a thing I want to text about to sort of review. This is not what I want.
We have one. I bought a thing of milk in my local store, and I paid with my card, and instantly went, "How was your experience?" I'm like, "I bought a milk. I don't need to tell you how my experience was. It worked fine." So it would have taken longer to do the survey than it would actually buy the milk. But go back to your previous point. Isn't this about making it relevant and engaging as well? Because if I can, it's what you perceive the value to be. If I said to you, Alex, I can help you add 7 years to your life by following these steps now, or 5 years, or live longer and healthier and disease or elsewhere free, you'd pay quite close attention to it. If I said to you, what's the old saying? The best time to change a roof is when it's not raining or when it's not broken. If I can tell you in advance, hey, your house is something's about to happen to your house, therefore do this preventative maintenance now to avoid inconvenience in a claim later, there's a good chance you might do it.
Mm. Mm. And that stuff I've seen, maybe I've not, I'm always conscious that as much as I work in the industry and we get across it, we work with our clients, we tend to know our clients really well, but sometimes outside of that, we have our blinkers on because there's only so much worldview we have. And I see a lot of that innovation in health. I see some of that stuff in travel that I'm interacting with. And I think more of that relevance is exactly the point. I don't want my insurer telling me things which are irrelevant to my life. But if my insurer is saying, even if on my car insurance, if they're sort of advising that, oh, your car's X amount of years old, have you had it serviced recently? We could book you in for a service. There's the kind of additional things that they could do that would add value. I'm not seeing the broader stuff. And I was going to ask you this question. Again, I apologize, it's a broad question, but are we doing enough to tackle some of the bigger challenges? You talked about the global risk report. You've got, climate emergencies, water, access to clean and safe water. Insurance is this facilitator of business. The only contentious podcast I've ever done was when with Bruce Carnegie Brown on, and then I basically got bombarded. I've never been harassed online in my life, but I got bombarded about Lloyd's decision or not to insure this, pipeline. Do you think we can, as an industry, do more on the bigger issues? Are we seeing enough innovation in those kind of steps towards things like being green insurers or being climate responsible insurers?
If you think about it, the world doesn't move without insurance, and that's why I get so excited about our industry, and that we play such a pinnacle role in society's ability to move and do anything at all. It really makes me feel proud of what our industry enables to happen, whether it's generation of risks that might be taking things to outer space, whether it might be building offshore wind and solar farms, whatever it might be, or stopping insuring things like coal mines and dirty fossil fuel. So we have an amazing opportunity as an insurance industry to enable or not, and help change the direction of society more broadly going forward, as well as in parallel educate everyone on what it is our role in societies and how we enable those things to take place. Nothing would happen today, and this is why I get excited about insurance. Nothing would happen today. You wouldn't be in the office. We wouldn't be online today. We wouldn't be driving cars, whatever else, without insurance being in place to mitigate those risks.
Yeah, and I think that's where I get a little bit frustrated, because I don't think sometimes there's been enough decisions made to not insure. The power of that to kind of go, no, we won't. I mean, it's the same as there's so much at play here. You've got finance. It's being financed by somebody. They can make that decision not to. It's being insured by somebody. They can make a decision not to. I think every step that we kind of go along that way, obviously there's a kind of profit decision based on that, and people have got to make kind of bigger choices. And we're constantly having the conversation on here. The reason we like working with kind of earlier stage startup businesses is they generally are, they're small, they're privately ran, so they kind of aren't responsible to shareholders. As soon as you get responsible to shareholders, there's a conflict there, because it's some people care only about profit, and that's understandable. So,
but not always. Not always. Many shareholders will now dictate and insist that we have our ESG agenda set up and actively governed and done correctly, our diversity agenda set up and everything else correctly. So I actually think our shareholders are becoming much more engaged and active to make sure that they are aligned to society's changing norms as we go forward. So I think both insurers, I think Lloyd's, for example, has done a great job over the last couple of years of saying no to certain things, to say we're no longer going to be in that business and we've got to change, and putting the right time limits. It's not an overnight change, but putting the right time limits in place to say over time, to ensure these risks will get more expensive, and at some point that cover will not be available.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think being realistic as well about timescales to change is a really important point, kind of moving towards that. And, it's the same for innovation. It's that, right, we've got an innovation roadmap. We want to get to this dream point of the customer, which is obviously never achievable because it continuously moves. But we're going to sort of take up these things piecemeal. And the same happens for kind of using, I don't know, innovation for good or insurance for good, and stopping some of these industries. Really conscious of your time, Nigel, and so I'll sort of finish with this one, which I sort of always like to talk about this time of year. It's been a really exciting, interesting year, 2022 for insurance and insurtech and innovation. What are you excited about as we look into 2023? Is there any specific sort of things on your, I don't know, whether it's events or innovations or kind of specific themes that you're seeing that you're kind of excited about seeing where they go in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I always talk about embedded because I've been talking about this for 5 years. I think it's actually topic of the day. I think people are taking it on mass scale and adoption and really investigating that. I think that's done and dusted now, and we'll see its course through to see how we engage. That will drive the necessity to update capability, systems, insights, data. So I actually get excited by actually how some of the underlying capability that we've got and others will help these insurers make those decisions. So whether it's a data perspective, whether it's an integration perspective, we've got some cool things to do there. We touched on ESG very lightly. I do think that's going to be huge for the industry through 2023 and beyond. So actually, if you bring all those things together, it comes back to actually how are we going to better organize, in fact, go back to our mission, organize the world's information, make it universally accessible. It's a great mission for insurers. I think we've got a really, really exciting part to play in that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'm really excited to see some of the partnerships you come out with. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, so I'm really pleased we've got to do it.
Thanks, Alex. Whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate, enjoy the holidays, and see you in 2023.
Good man. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.